So in this video, I'm going to be showing you 3 exercises you can use to improve your push-ups. Now, a lot of people don't realize that push-ups are actually a very technical exercise, and I see many people performing them incorrectly. So the purpose of this video is to cover or identify the common mistakes seen with push-ups, as well as the exercises for being able to correct those mistakes. And lastly, I want to set 2 standards for proper push-up execution, because setting standards is a principle that really should be applied to any movement or exercise that you want to train or practice, because if you don't set standards, it's going to be extremely hard to track your progress and you're likely not going to see the results that you want. So let's go ahead and get started. So mistake number 1 that I commonly see with push-ups is a lack of awareness and poor alignment with the pelvis and the lower back. So what this is going to look like in a push-up is you're going to get this kind of sagging of the pelvis and this excessive sway or arcing of the lower back. Now, this is a problem for a couple of reasons. Number 1, it's putting a lot of stress on the spine, and number 2, you're essentially creating this huge energy leak in your body, which is not going to allow you to transfer force through the ground. So you're going to end up being a lot weaker and predisposing yourself to injury. So instead, what we want to see, and this is actually going to be standard number 1, is a more straight body position. So what I mean is that you should be able to draw a line from your ear through your ankle in the top part of the push-up. And this alignment with your body should remain throughout the duration of the push-up. And what you also notice is that there's a slight backwards tilt or tucking of the pelvis. So a good exercise to address this mistake is a simple pelvic tilting drill. Now, pelvic tilting is going to help develop better awareness, control, and coordination in the lower back pelvic area. And specifically, it'll allow you to better monitor your position or your alignment when you're in a push-up. So how you're going to perform this pelvic tilting exercise is, first, you want to stand with your feet together with your knees straight. Now, this is important because it's going to help you to better target movement in the pelvis. If the knees are bent or the feet are farther apart, it's going to be harder to really get the feel and the coordination that we're looking for. So once you're set up from there, I want you to think of your pelvis like it's a glass of water. And using that imagery or that visual, I want you to think of spilling water out of the front of your pelvis. So what will end up happening is your pelvis is going to tilt forward. And what you'll notice here is you kind of tend to get this kind of arcing in the lower back, which is very akin to the first mistake we saw in the push-up. And I want you to hold this position for a couple seconds just to take note of what it feels like. And from there, you're going to do just the opposite. So now you're going to try to spill water out of the back of your pelvis. And what you're going to probably notice here is that there's kind of an automatic contraction in the abdominals and in the glutes. Now what this is going to do is better help to stabilize your pelvis and your torso, and it's going to shore up that energy leak that I was talking about earlier. So from here, this is the position that, or is closer to the position that you would want to be in during a push-up. So mistake number 2, commonly seen with push-ups, is a lack of mobility and a lack of control in the shoulder blades or scapulas. Now this is going to be more difficult to see than the first mistake, but what is essentially happening is that when someone is going through the range of motion of a push-up, their shoulder blades are not moving at all. And this is a problem for a couple reasons. Number 1, it's going to put an unnecessary amount of stress on the front of the shoulder, so you're going to be more predisposed to injury. And number 2, you're not going to be able to explore as great a range of motion in your push-up. So the important thing to note here is that the shoulder blade is really the main support system for the actual shoulder joint itself. So what should be happening every time the shoulder moves is there should be an accompanying movement of the shoulder blade to kind of follow the shoulder to provide integrity and support. So again, instead of having the shoulders kind of stuck in place, we actually want to see this gliding of the shoulder blades along the upper back. And this is going to lead us into standard number 2, which that movement, that gliding of the shoulder blades is known as protraction or retraction. So just to show you what I mean here is that when we're in the top part of a push-up, we want to have our shoulder blades as far apart as possible. Again, this is known as protraction. And basically, if I was to run my hand along your back when you're in the top part of the push-up, my fingers should not catch on your shoulder blades. If they do, it means that you're not fully protracted and your shoulder blades aren't as far apart as they should. Now, on the opposite end, when you're in the bottom part of a push-up, you should be in full retraction, or the shoulder blades should be as close together if not touching. So that's going to look like this. Okay? So basically, with most push-up variations, you're going to be going between protraction and retraction, and this is going to allow you to provide stability and support to the shoulder. It's also going to allow you to be stronger with the movement. So a good exercise to address this mistake is a drill called scapular push-ups. Now, scapular push-ups are going to help to improve mobility and control of the shoulder blades specific to that protraction, retraction that I just mentioned. And it's also going to be specific to the movement you're going to see within a push-up. Now, how you're going to perform this exercise is first you're going to start out on the hands and knees. So from here, your knees want to be directly underneath your hips, your wrists want to be directly underneath your shoulders, with the hands flat on the ground and the fingers splayed. So from here, you want to make sure that your elbows are locked or as straight as possible, because this is going to help target movement in the shoulder blade. If the elbows are bent, it kind of defeats the purpose of the drill. So once you're set up, we're just going to be going back and forth between protraction and retraction. So we're going to start in protraction, which again is bringing the shoulder blades as far apart as possible. Again, your upper back should be smooth so that there should be no catching of the shoulder blade. And then from here, we're going to, without bending the elbows, I'm going to move into retraction, trying to touch my shoulder blades together, and then come back up. So you're going to basically alternate back and forth between protraction and retraction, again, trying to focus on keeping the elbows straight. And it's also important to note, in addition to keeping the elbows straight, we want to make sure that we're not arcing through our lower back or curving kind of our low back, as well as making sure to not shrug the shoulders up. So if we shrug the shoulders up, again, it's defeating the purpose of the drill because we're really not getting that stability from the shoulder blades. It ends up involving more of the neck and the upper traps. So I'll just kind of show you common mistakes with the shoulders. So what I mean is that when people will go down, they tend to want to do this. Okay, so we don't want that. Instead, again, you want to try to keep as much of a gap between your shoulder and your ear as possible. And again, trying to keep the rest of your spine in a neutral alignment. Now, once this drill becomes easier, you can progress it to a more advanced variation. So instead of being on the hands and knees, we're going to progress it to the hands and feet. So again, elbows straight, palms flat, fingers splayed, and we're going to start in full protraction, come down into retraction, and back up. Okay? So if you're on the opposite end of the spectrum, where maybe putting weight through the hands or starting from this all fours position is too challenging, what you can do is basically stand facing a wall, placing the hands up against the wall with the palms flat, and this will allow you to kind of groove that protraction, retraction in an unloaded situation. But again, being able to improve the mobility and the control or coordination of the shoulder blades is going to directly carry over into your push-ups to provide more strength and stability to your shoulders. So mistake number 3 commonly seen with push-ups is not possessing the requisite mobility, tissue quality, and strength in the structures of the hands and the wrists. And specifically not being able to tolerate load in this kind of extended position of the wrist. Now, commonly what you'll see then with push-ups, or when people have this as an issue, is that they'll only do their push-ups with like a neutral wrist position on their knuckles, or they'll only do variations where they're using some kind of a push-up stand or TRX, again where their wrist is more in this neutral alignment. And I'm not saying that those variations are bad, but if you're having to do those variations because you can simply just not tolerate loading in this position, that's not a good thing, and we need to try to rectify this. So a good exercise for addressing weakness and mobility restrictions in the wrists and the hands is an exercise I call wrist raises. Now keep in mind there are many different exercises that you can use to improve mobility and strengthen the hands. I'm just selecting this one because I see it as kind of one of those best bang for your buck drills. But more importantly, think of it more as a principle in the sense that you want to get in the habit of touching the floor every day, and specifically loading weight through your hands, kind of in this extended wrist position. So what this drill that I'm going to show you will do is simultaneously build mobility in wrist extension while improving tissue quality and the ability for you to tolerate load in push-ups. So how you're going to perform the wrist raise drill is from the same position that we just did the scapula push-ups. So on your hands and your knees. So to demonstrate here, you want to have the knees directly underneath the hips, the wrists directly underneath the shoulders. Hands are open or fingers are splayed with the palms flat on the ground. And you want to make sure that the index fingers are parallel to each other when they're on the ground. So you don't want to have the hands turned out like this, and you don't want to have them turned in like this. The second thing is, just like in the last drill, we want to make sure that the elbows are locked, just like so. But in addition, we also want to make sure that the pit of the elbow is facing directly in front of us. So from this perspective, a lot of times people will do this, and this is not good. Instead, what we want to do is rotate the pits forward, and that's what we want. So once you're set up in position, from here what you're going to do is attempt to lift the thumbs off the ground or off the floor. Now you may not be able to do this when you first try, but it's more important to attempt to lift off of the ground with the thumbs, and you're going to simultaneously push through the knuckle of the index finger and raise your palms off the ground, just like this. And then you're going to slowly lower the palms back down to the ground under control. And you're going to repeat this movement going up and going down. So a good way to think of this is like a calf raise with your feet. So with a calf raise, you push up through the ball of the foot with the heel raising off of the ground and lowering back down. Same concept here, so you really want to avoid any kind of bouncing. And if you cannot control your hands and your wrists with this degree of loading, you can regress it or lessen the load in a couple of ways. Number one, you can stay on the hands and knees and just slide the hands back so that they're closer to your legs. And what this is going to do is put more of the weight in your hips or your lower body, and put less weight on the hands and the wrists, but still allow you to load to some degree. So from here, it's the same thing. You're going to, again, get all those cues set into place. You're going to lift the thumbs, push through the first knuckle or the knuckle of the index finger, and come straight off the ground. So if yet you're still unable to tolerate load, or if this is painful, or you simply just cannot get into this 90-degree angle here at the wrist, just like with the scapular push-ups, regress the drill to where you're performing the variation against the wall. What this will do is it'll allow you to explore that range of motion in an unloaded situation, but then over time, as you are able to groove that movement, get stronger, you want to be able to move it down towards the floor. Now, if this variation gets easier for you, or to the point where it's no problem to do about 10 to 12 reps like this, then you can slowly start working your legs back. And again, this is going to increase the amount of load on the hands, eventually to where you're doing it out of the push-up. But again, the most important thing here is having good control, making sure that the reps are quality. And what this drill is going to do is help to simultaneously build range of motion or mobility, especially in this extension of the wrist. And it's also going to help to build tissue quality and strengthen the structures of the forearm, the wrist, and the hand to make you stronger in your push-ups. So to quickly review, the three exercises that we've covered in this video are the pelvic tilts, the scapular push-ups, and the wrist raises. The two standards that we covered are the straight body alignment with the pelvic tilt, and number two, full protraction and retraction of the shoulder blades while performing a push-up. I want you to think of these exercises and standards as more principles that you can apply to most push-up variations. And in terms of how you can implement these specific exercises are as part of, say, a warm-up. You can do them as part of a superset. You can implement them kind of throughout the day. But the goal should be to try to make these movements as smooth and as fluid as possible, progressing them over time to more advanced variations as appropriate. In terms of the specific reps and sets, I would say, as a baseline, to start with sets of 10 for each of these three exercises. And the last point that I would say is probably the most important in terms of being able to see the transfer or the carryover from these exercises into being able to do more effective push-ups is you need to frequently practice your push-ups. If you're not then you're really not going to see that transfer or that improvement. So make sure that you're training your push-ups, you're practicing them, as well as integrating these exercises. So if you found this video useful and you want to see more videos like it, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking the red button below. Also be sure to click the like button or the thumbs up, as well as share with your family and friends. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.